So today I've got a sweet deck where we try to win without the need to actually attack our opponent. So much incremental damage makes it impossible for our opponents to keep up. Hey everyone, Hex here, and today I've got a deck inspired by a comment from my last video where we're going to cause serious life loss to our opponents using loads of sweet synergies and abilities without necessarily attacking. As always though, if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It massively helps out, and needless to say, I really appreciate all the support you give this channel. But onto this deck, and today we're on a mono black burn, drain, and any way we can cause pain to our opponents without always doing damage from our creatures. So let's start with the newest cards from Wilds of Eldraine. Hopeless Nightmare is a 1-drop enchantment that when it ETBs causes your opponent to discard a card and lose 2 life. Then when it leaves the battlefield, you scry 2. This card has a few synergies in this deck, but the 2 life loss is the #1 reason we have it here. Trust me, before they notice, their life will have dwindled to nothing purely from cards just like this. We've got Beseech the Mirror. Now I've used this card a few times, but it is a house at hitting the 4-drop black cards needed to deal with whatever situation you find yourself in. You can use the Nightmare as bargain fodder here, and although this nombos with the Nightmare's Scry 2 ability, we do have other bargainable targets in this deck. Next, a card I haven't used before but has won me a lot of games today, and that's Rankle's Prank. It's a 4-mana sorcery that can be found with Beseech if needed. It allows you to choose 1 or more from each player discards 2 cards, each player loses 4 life, and each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Now I'm interested in the life loss mainly, and look to use this card to get the final killing blow out of nowhere. The next 6 cards all work together to slowly pressure your opponent's life total. We've got Braids, Lord Skitter, and Jadar. Braids allows you to sacrifice permanents to force your opponents to do the same, or risk losing 2 life and allowing you to draw a card, whilst Jadar and Lord Skitter make repeatable tokens to allow just this. They are also the engines enabling Beseech if your 1-drop enchantment isn't around. I've got Vraan, Executioner Thane for even more drain, especially if you're looking to combo with Braids and tokens. You drain for 2 whenever 1 or more creatures you control die each turn. Morbid Opportunist allows us to draw cards when other creatures die on either side of the battlefield. Then our good friend Sheoldred. She is always causing opponents trouble with the 2 life loss and favourable stats, and we do importantly gain a lot of life each game from it, meaning mono red is definitely one of our more favourable matchups here. I've got Trespasser, my #1 favourite creature in the whole of Standard, for more damage here and there and keeping those graveyards clear. Corrupted Conviction allows us to draw cards when you need to, and there is a sweet game I played earlier when I used this in conjunction with Sheoldred to stay alive for a turn before we mounted an amazing comeback. Just the 1 copy of Corrupt, which deals X damage to any target, and you gain that much life, where X is the amount of swamps you control. A bunch of removal to deal with the meta, with Path of Peril always a searchable option, and I am splashing 4 Ores of Lands in the mana base for the rare occurrence that we get to use its cleave cost. We do have 25 lands, and that is the deck. So I once played a similar deck where you didn't need to actually attack to ever win, although there's a whole bunch of really strong creatures, and I do think this deck is very similar, but there's always the attacking option available as our creatures are so strong. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on this deck or cards I should play going forward, you can let me know in the comments below. You can find me over on Twitter, and as always, thank you for watching. Alright, on the play, and I kind of like this hand in the fact that we can deal with any early threats they've got, and if they don't do anything, then maybe we can use our Beseech to get us into the game on turn 4 or 5. And opponent with a Rakdos land, and I think we'll just play this Vraan that we've just drawn. Oh, it survives. Okay, I was kind of thinking it was going to get cut down there. But Vraan sticks around. And there's Braids. Okay, so we have 2/3 of our combo. If we can either find a land next turn, or something like Lord Skitter or Jadar, we're definitely in business. If we find a land, then we can just Beseech to play those the following turn. But obviously up against a red and black deck, our creatures may not survive that long. They do play Karamonix, which means they are probably rat tribal, and they miss. They don't find any rats, so we swerved a little bullet there. And I'm just going to go for Beseech here. We could obviously go for the throat their creature and just attack them for 5, but I think this is a lot of pressure we can put onto them, sort of sustained pressure. They're definitely going to need to find a removal spell soon. But my understanding with rat decks is the ones I've been playing, they don't seem to play too much removal, as they're very much on the beatdown. It is the Swarm Piper for our opponent, so they're going to start creating rats when rats die, and there's a gnawing vermin. So our Braids tactic here probably going to be nullified slightly by the fact that the opponent's going to be able to create so many 1/1s. So I think what we'll start off by doing is just chopping down this gnawing vermin. They're going to create a 1/1 here. Could have taken the Swarm Piper, I guess. But opponent targets Vraan. And then let's play Lord Skitter now. So there's a target in the graveyard, in the gnawing vermin. And this is what we're here to do. We are going to go to our end step. Braids can sacrifice our rat. Vraan is going to trigger. Opponent's going to be drained for 2. They need to sacrifice a creature or they take another 2. And they don't sacrifice a creature. We get to draw. And in that case, we drew a swamp. And this is going to be our game for the next 6 turns until we can win, hopefully. Unless they find a removal spell. And if they do find a removal spell, I bet that they go for Braids. And we have a copy in our hand. So looking okay for us now. We just got to make sure we don't die to some crazy rat effect. Yep, go for the throat on Braids. And Vraan triggers, so they lose another 2 life. Already down to 9. So it's certainly not a game we're going to be attacking with here. Let's drop Braids. Well, I guess we'll go for the throat first. The Swarm Piper. Totentans, I think that's how that one's pronounced. They create a rat. We'll play Braids. Lord Skitter triggers. We'll take care of their creature in their graveyard. No attacks. And we'll sacrifice our rat. And we'll see if they want to sack a rat this time. And yeah, rat down. Opponent goes down to 7 though. And that is a Gutter Dweller. Creates 2 more rats. So had they not been such a creature heavy deck, I feel like we may have already won by now. We can always sacrifice other things like our lands, but I'm sure the opponent will just sack theirs. Corrupted Conviction's nice if we need to draw some cards. But we're just going to keep going with this effect here. Nothing else for us to do here. This is how we kind of design the deck. This was the exact comment in my last video, was go for Braids and Lord Skitter. In the past you would use Jadar, but Lord Skitter does kind of the same thing, but you get the added bonus where you get to take creatures from the opponent's graveyards or exile them. Opponent down to 5 again, and yeah, the damage builds up in this deck. It's very incremental, but before they know it, they're already facing kind of lethal. More rats. And you know what we need? More rats. Nashi Moonsage's Scion comes down. Now, that's not going to have much of an effect for us if it does hit us, because they're not really going to be able to afford to pay life to cast off the top of our deck. They do get in there for 7 though, and I'm not sure what this attack necessarily is about, but I'm going to go for the throat this Dweller. It has Menace, and I worry that the opponent might swarm us next turn, but they don't. They die to the old Braids combo there. Alright, on the play, and this hand would be nice if we had some earlier plays than a turn 3 Graveyard Trespasser, so ditch that, and this one's a little bit better. We do have a turn 1 play with the Nightmare or Cut Down, so I can keep this one, and we can put Corrupt here to the bottom of our deck. I'm going to lead with a Swamp though, instead of the tap land, just to get this enchantment on the battlefield basically. That will also allow us next turn to hold open Cut Down whilst playing our tap land. Opponent discards a Plains, okay. And it is a Recruitment Officer for them. So I'm glad we have Cut Down available now. That's Vraan. That will be a nice play next turn. So I think we'll just go through to their turn here, see what they want to do before we decide what to cut down. Hopefully we don't see a Thalia now. That would be awful. Okay, it is the Valiant Veteran, so that is going to pump up the Recruitment Officer to a 3-2. I think Cut Down has to be the Veteran, though. That will mean that their creatures might get a little bit out of control. We do find Beseech. But I think this turn we're just going to have to drop Vraan here. So they may have a Brutal Cathar for our creature here, but so be it. We need to play our spells, and if they're on just soldiers, we're going to need to find a way to get to maybe our Path of Peril here. But probably won't block this. It's just a 2-1. Although I would like the Officer off the battlefield. Vraan might be needed later for blocking some bigger creatures. But with our land there, we get to Beseech, and we're going to bargain away our Nightmare. Nightmare allows us to scry 2, but that's going to be nullified because we are going to be looking in our deck. And I think I'm going to look for... I'm going to go for Rankle's Prank. I think I should have definitely attacked first, because I'm going to go all 3 targets here, all 3 abilities. So that's each player sacrifices 2 creatures, each player discards 2 cards, and each player loses 4 life. Here comes Mire, and there's our Sheoldred. So pretty happy with the way we did that last turn. Sheoldred, a pretty nice blocker in the face of Mire. Another veteran for our opponent, but Mire's still just a 4/5. They don't want to attack into our Sheoldred there. As Sheoldred obviously has a Death Touch. An opponent with a Resistant Squad. So they draw a card, but they do go down to 8 because of that. So Sheoldred putting in some work here. And yeah, we'll just take care of Mire here. And this is just a classic, can opponent kill Sheoldred before we get a chance to kill them. Another Mire. Is it Mire? And there's a Beseech. No bargainable targets, but what we can do here is a nice little play I like. We can play Beseech for its sorcery cost, and then we will look for a card we can cast this turn in Hopeless Nightmare. Hopeless Nightmare will force the opponent to discard that last card that they've got in their hand. They will lose 2 life as well, and they are literally on a very quick clock here. Sheoldred takes them down to 2, and they need to deal with this now. And it's just a Plains, and I believe that probably means we're going to win in their upkeep. Opponent does get in there with their Mire and Resistant Squad, but I can take 10 damage. And yeah, this is a classic Sheoldred win. Opponent couldn't deal with it, and we should be okay here. No attacks, and opponent loses 2 life and dies. No creatures attacking from us then. Alright, on the draw, and this is a fantastic hand, curving out to Sheoldred, so we'll see how this goes. Opponent with a Swift Spear. I kind of want this to be mono red. I feel like our deck is pretty well suited to deal with that, especially the life gain we get. Opponent with a Phoenix Chick, and they go to attacks. Yeah, I'm going to go to damage. They didn't. If they had a Monstrous Rage, I feel like holding the cut down until you go to damage is sometimes the better option. But we took an extra damage there, but I was fine with that. We'll play Vraan though. Yes, we just need a land. A couple of lands over the next couple of turns, and I really think we're going to be okay here. Opponent with a Kumano. We go down to 16. The Chick takes us down to 15. Blazer Crescendo is going to take us down to 12. So they do have tricks in their deck, so that's why I feel like not playing your removal spells until you go to damage is sometimes the better option, especially if the creature just has 1 power. But go for the throat is a good draw instead of a land there. Another Kumano. And there's Squee, coming down as a 3/3, which we are going to snipe with our go for the throat here. Fingers crossed we find a land so that we can play the Trespasser to remove that from the graveyard. Another go for the throat. Okay. So our deck's being good to us here and giving us 2 drops to play. Their Kumano turns to an Etchin, and I'm definitely probably going to block here. Invasion of Regatha is going to do 4 damage to us. Okay, well, this is a huge chunk of our life total. I think we're not just going to block, we're also going to blow up the Chick. If we let that through and they draw something next turn that gets to pump up the flyer, then we're in trouble. But we've cleared the board. Yeah, we're down to 6. There's the swamp we've been waiting for. We were always going to draw one sooner rather than later. So here's the Trespasser. We'll snipe that squee from their graveyard. And we can start gaining some life back. And the cool thing here is the opponent can't even target the Trespasser. They need a card to discard. But they attack with the Etching, so this presumably means they've got a Monstrous Rage type effect. So we will block. Can't take too much damage. Opponent's hovering over our Trespasser, and it's a Lightning Strike. So that attack was a little bit unnecessary. I don't know if they realised that they had to discard a card to kill the Trespasser. But we go down to 4. Lord Skitter can be played now. Don't want to exile any creatures. We'll leave that duty to the Trespasser. But we'll definitely attack to gain a life. And get rid of the Phoenix Chick, which can be played from the graveyard eventually. And opponent just finds a land. And have we turned the corner here against this mono red deck? I think so, as we found a land, so we get to drop Sheoldred as well. In fact, we don't need to drop Sheoldred because I believe we've got lethal here. If we play Beseech, we can bargain away one of these rats. And there's a sneaky card in our deck that does 4 damage to each player, and we are on 6 life. And that card is Rankle's Prank, which we will cast now. And Rankle's Prank will take us over the line. What a great win there. Alright, on the draw. And I will keep this one. And that is a Kumano turn 1. So another mono red deck, I would presume. But this time we will definitely drop a tap land. We do not have a turn 1 play, so opponent is going to be playing their Charming Scoundrel. It gets buffed by Kumano. It is a 3/3 as they put a Wicked Roll on it. So all their eggs are in the one basket with this Charming Scoundrel, but unfortunately all we have is a Jadar on the battlefield now. Obviously our zombie does not block. It is used predominantly to fuel Braids and Beseech. I think I am going to block here because I could absolutely get smashed here if the opponent has instant speed spells. Monstrous Rage attached to the Etching. Okay. I wonder if they should have put that on the Scoundrel there. Obviously it would have lost its Wicked Roll, but we're going to blow up the board as we have just drawn Path of Peril. So we could have played Graveyard Trespasser there. And then we could have Path of Peril next turn. The Trespasser would have survived, but I'm slightly concerned about their top decks. And that is one of them I'm definitely concerned about. Godric comes down, takes us down to 7. We don't have much choice here but to chuck down Sheoldred. This is a decent blocker to Godric. Fingers crossed they can't kill us now though. And there's a Kumano, and they could probably do that. A Monstrous Rage would kill us now. Bloodthirsty Adversary makes Godric a 4/4, which they can pump to a 5/5. So we're not dead yet. We're on 1 though, we're very close to dying. But you're only dead when you're cold and dead, and we're not cold yet because we get a play Trespasser here, which is going to gain us back a life. So we'll take out this Scoundrel. And I am not playing Vraan here. I want to, but I'm not. They lose 2 life by drawing a card. Just hope there's not 2 permanents now. Invasion of Regatha, that's 4 damage to our face, so that would kill us, but this is why I didn't play Vraan, because I kind of thought this might come up. We will we will sacrifice our Graveyard Trespasser, draw 2 cards. Sheoldred gains us 4 life. The Invaders takes us back down to 4. What have they got as a follow-up play here? They're attacking. Well, just going to block their biggest creature here. And no instant speed spells. We go down to 2. That doesn't look like that's a play with fire in their hand. It could be. I don't think so. This is going through quite smoothly. We'll play Vraan though. And Sheoldred. I'm not going to attack. Going to hold the cut down. In fact, I'm going to play the cut down now in case they get a chance to pump this next turn to get it out of range of cut down. And yeah, we're already back up to 4. Etching comes down. It is a 2-2. But if they run out of resources, that is an adversary. They don't have enough mana to sink a instant from their graveyard into it. We find a swamp. We go back up to 6. And yeah, I'm probably going to attack with Sheoldred and play the other one, but they scoop it up. Anyway, that was nice. We come back from the dead there. Alright, on the draw. I'm happy with this hand in the respect that we have Hopeless Nightmare and Beseech. And then Path of Peril can bail us out of any trouble that we find ourselves in. Another turn 1 Kumano. Okay. Obviously the most common turn 1 play. You can't go a couple of games without seeing that card on turn 1. But Hopeless Nightmare is a card I like to play on turn 1. And they even get to ditch a Kumano there. Their hand must be absolutely stacked. Phoenix Chicks comes down. It is a 2-2. And Monstrous Rage makes it a 5-3. We go down to 14. I might have kept that Kumano, to be honest. Obviously, I don't know what they've got, but it doesn't matter too much right now. We're in a whole heap of trouble. We'll see what they want to play their turn 3 play. Erebrax Forge. Now, that is a card we're going to struggle to deal with. I love the Forge. I think it makes it so difficult to deal with decks like this mono red deck because we can't deal with that repeatable threat every turn. And they are playing Gruul as well, so they've clearly got tricks up their sleeve. We have to Path of Peril there. It's another Phoenix Chick. Okay. We're going to take another 3 here. Okay, there's definitely something they've got in their hand at instant speed. We go down to 5. So I'm wary about that card they've got in their hand there. So if we play Sheoldred and it is just like a Monstrous Rage, the chick's just going to kill us. We could play the Rankle's Prank. I think I'm going to go for that. I don't know if this is necessarily the right thing to do, but we're going to discard that card from their hand. I'm nervous about it. And we'll make them sacrifice their creature. So it's a toss-up between doing this and playing Sheoldred. But we'll see how this goes. This was always a very difficult matchup when the Forge was played, I think. Because that at the minimum is going to do 3 damage to us now. Hopefully they've just drawn a land though. The spell they had was a double strike effect. Ah, it's Monstrous Rage. They drew off the top anyway, so I'm not sure we were getting out of that. So GG's opponent. Alright, on the draw here. I can get behind this hand. We have a quite a low curve going on. Opponent with a swamp. And that is a duress. So slightly annoying for us as they remove our Hopeless Nightmare from our hand. Duress was a card I did consider in this deck, but chose against it in the end. I just didn't feel it fit the deck enough, and the Hopeless Nightmare was good enough there in the 1-drop slot anyway. We find another Path of Peril as they discarded ours. But this time we'll play Vraan. Surely this is just going to get chopped down against this mono black deck. Well, they play Virus Beetle instead, so are they just full-on discard? If they are, I don't mind that as much. It's a Hopeless Nightmare for us, which I think we'll play to force them to discard a card for a change. And they're also going to take 2 damage from this. They're going to go down to 16. And they discard another Duress. Alright, so they have had 3 Duresses in their opening 8 or 9 cards. That might be one too many Duresses, I think, in a deck, as not everyone plays non-creature spells. But we will poke our opponent down to 14. And we're just going to keep doing this. They're missing land drops, it looks like. They hold their Beetle back. So we will sacrifice our Nightmare here to scry 2. And I'm fine with both of these cards. We'll take these. We'll play our Lord Skitter here. And we'll eat one of those dresses from the graveyard. Create a rat. Now Lord Skitter is going to give us the value we need over the next few turns to create an army of tokens to get the opponent's life total down as quick as possible. So this is definitely a game where we look to be attacking our opponent rather than doing incremental sort of non-combat damage. Sheoldred's Edict's going to snipe our Vraan. But we are going to hit them for 4 with our rats. Don't want to take out the creature from the graveyard in case we find a Trespasser. That's the Trespasser's job. Virtue of Persistence here on our Lord Skitter. Sometimes it's nice to kill your own creature, which I can't do in this instance, to fizzle out their spell, but I don't think they're getting to 7 mana anytime soon. And there's Braids. Braids is great as we get to sacrifice our rats, but I'm not going to do that this turn. I'm going to sacrifice a land because there's no way the opponent is going to do the same, and if they do, I'm very happy with that. They go down to 8, we keep our 2 rats around, and next turn I'm just going to sacrifice another swamp, and our poor opponent who was mana screwed has succumbed to Braids.